that will be on. Got it. The 6 people who will be, the artists that will be presenting tonight are Jorge Munoz, Dawn Mendelsohn, Joseph Captain, Lauren Mehrberg, Carlos Rodo, and Rosangela Kusma Gasparin. And the first person that will be presenting is Jorge Munoz, and this exhibit is a little different than it has been in the past years. We're not going to a gallery to show the work, but we asked each participant each artist to develop a video or a PowerPoint to present their art to you. And I know you'll be very impressed with what they've done. So the first one would be Jorge Munoz, and we can play his.
Hi, I'm Jorge. I'm from Colombia, and I love mosaics. I started doing mosaics 10 years ago as a hobby, but now it's a way of life. I think mosaic, I love and live mosaic. This video is supposed to be about me, about art, about my background, but no, it isn't. This is about life. My life, your life, everyone's life. Your life is made up of moments, happy, sad, good and bad moments that are only yours. Each of these moments is a part of yourself, and they are like pieces, large or small, simple or complicated, that, as in a mosaic, must be together to become you, to become alive. A mosaic is made up of a few or many different pieces. But just as they are different, they must be together to give you a sense of wholeness and harmony. And all this will remind you of your own capacity to model your life, to change your perspective, and find your own path to live. Life is love, joy, sadness, despair, happiness, hope, resignation, beauty. Okay, love your life, love what you do, embrace it and shape it, because it all comes together in the end, just like the pieces of mosaic. I found my way, you will find yours.
So that was a really wonderful video by Jorge. He's not here yet. Hopefully he'll join us. However, he is a pilot, and he said he could be called away, so that may be where he is. But no matter what, it was really a wonderful sharing. Next, we will hear about Dawn Mendelsohn's journey, both in her art and in her community building. Hi, Dawn.
Hi. Let me get my thing to share up. That was such a beautiful video, wasn't it? That was really nice. Now I want to go redo mine. Okay. Let me see if I can set up my. There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. I just put together kind of a little journey of my creative process and creativity, and just a couple of things about me for those I haven't met yet. I work in the style of Picassiette, and I've been a mosaic artist for 25 years and also a community teaching artist for 20 years. And I'm in Long Beach, California, where it's nice and cool today. And I use primarily recycled materials, broken plates, cups, porcelain. I like to use natural and man-made materials, stone, pieces of metal, minerals, whatever I find, kind of like the Picassiette house, where whatever I find on the street, I'll bring it in. So I love the texture and the colors and the history of ceramics. And usually that's my starting point for when I create a piece. And one of the biggest things, I'd say probably 70% of the work I do is community work. It's really important to me. I work with several different organizations. The first one is Piece by Piece, which is a nonprofit arts program and social enterprise, working with residents of Skid Row and South LA, people who have experienced homelessness, and teaching them the art of mosaic to create public art and earn income. It helps them get back on their feet and also leave a legacy in their community. I also work with Artworks LBC right here in my own neighborhood with a neighborhood association, and we use art as a conduit to building community. So we set up art in the park. You can see the picture there where people just show up and they paint. They do, of course, mosaic because it's always got to be present. But it's a way for different people with different backgrounds to sit down at a table and have a conversation about the issues in their neighborhood and find resources. And then lastly, I do a lot of work with schools. So I'll involve the community in creating artwork for schools. And those things are interesting to me. And because they inspire me to see things from different perspectives. I always learn from people I'm working with, and I share what I love, which is mosaic. And also I love that it uplifts people through the power of art. So as I said before, I'm mostly inspired by the pieces that I collect. And I have an embarrassingly large collection of broken things. I actually have a thrift store that delivers to me, which is amazing after all these years. Who would have thought? Things show up at the door, which is really great. Here's kind of a timeline of the progress of my work. This was my first piece in the 90s. And it was just a little kit I got at an art store. And then I experimented. This is a 100% recycled project here, the vase in 2003. I bought old scuffed up vases and roughed them up and then used recycled materials. These are napkin rings. I just used all kinds of different things. And then I was experimenting with going more two-dimensional and doing abstract designs, playing with, again, broken plates and things like that. And then in the mid 2000s, 2014-ish, I started getting really textural, and I'm using all kinds of really rich, mixed with stained glass and metals and all kinds of things like that. So here are just a few images of the work that I did during that time. So I liked to use big pieces of stained glass and then mix in all of the recycled materials that I found. This is a piece that I entered into an exhibit and won a prize for. And it was based on this railroad tie right here. A group of artists were given a railroad tie, and we had to do something with it in a piece. And I just worked it in with a bunch of metal, a lot of metal. There's copper piping. I found that amazing glass in the background. But really what inspired me were these very textural pieces. This is like the back of a dragon. You can see it running throughout, which I thought was really neat. And then a little while later, I started my own garden, and I'm really enjoying growing my own food. And I got really obsessed with food flowers. And so I took a lot of photos in my garden and I started to interpret them using the recycled materials again. So get a strawberry flower, tomatoes, and then a tomato blossom. Those were really fun to make. And then I've done a lot of work on gourds, which I thought were really fun. A friend of mine had grown a lot of gourds, and so she passed a few along to me, and I just love the shapes of them and seeing what they have to say and what kind of materials work with them. They're all interior pieces, and the stands are upside down plates, which makes a nice way to hold them and keep them stable. During the pandemic, I did a lot of things in the studio, and one was like a series I called the Curved series. So it's kind of the same design, but interpreted using different materials, different color themes, and really had fun exploring using ceramics, not just flat, but on their edges, and you know, bringing in some keys and some things that are recognizable. What I really like to do is find things that surprise people in my work, where they get up close and they're like, is that a key? So I like that a lot. And this is a piece I finished recently called Soldagi, which is a jazz tune. A lot of my pieces are named after jazz tunes because I like to listen to music when I'm working, and that inspires the mood. I'm sure a lot of people have that experience. So this has everything in it. I mean, probably there's a kitchen sink in there somewhere. This is also a kind of a similar piece. I made a sphere. This one is about, I think, maybe 16 inches. Has all kinds of things on it. And then I fashioned a stand for it using an old tire jack, and a saw blade, and then something I found in my neighbor's garden. Don't tell him. But it's a really nice stand for this kind of steampunk, someone told me, piece. And then during the pandemic, I did a lot of doodling, a lot of drawing, and really had fun. So I did a whole series of these kind of Zentangle influenced, and I enjoyed them so much. I thought, oh, I'm going to try to interpret them into mosaic. So this is one of the pieces, the first one actually. And I tried to, which you can't see here, but color the thin set behind the background. Thanks to Kelly Knickerbocker and my friend Luz, who gave me some good suggestions for that. And I'm working on the second piece for that right now. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Sorry, Dawn, I know that you do a great deal of community work and spend a lot of time with that, and so I'm sort of amazed that you have time to do your personal work. How do you make it work together?
Well, you know, I just do. It's so important to me to bring art to communities, and mosaic is the perfect way to do that. And when I go out and I show people what mosaic is, there's a million questions, and a lot of times there's questions that I had not thought of before, and oh, that's very interesting. And so I can bring that back into my studio and work with those ideas, influences, inspirations. So it's kind of, to me, it's just this nice balance. It goes back and forth. And also I have 2 days in one day. So I do go out and do the community work in the morning, and then I come home and have dinner, and then I go back and I work in the studio at night. That's basically what I do.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yes. So thank you very much. Your work, you know, is so creative, and your community involvement is so inspiring. So appreciate that. The next Next person that we're going to see is Joseph Kaftan, who will share his story of and journey to mosaic art and the people who have influenced him.
Well, I was born into a pretty creative family. My mom was a newspaper photographer and trained painter, and my dad carved wood sculptures in his spare time. And, so they built their house in the early 1950s, and my mom drew wine glasses on the backsplash in the kitchen, and my dad glued glass tiles to the wall, and that was him making his first mosaic. And he went on to make more mosaics on the walls, but quickly started making them in frames. And he made many mosaics a year for the rest of his life. And I was inspired by my parents, and I studied art and then later graphic design. And I think that my time designing book covers was really when I developed my eye for composition and color. Years later, I returned home after my dad had a stroke, and I saw his mosaic table sitting there. And I thought, we're gonna make a mosaic together. I'm gonna be his hands, and he's gonna sit next to me and guide me along. And we did that, and he appreciated that experience, and so did I. And we made a nice little mosaic of my house. So we decided to make another one. We started a mosaic of a group of kayakers. And halfway through, that's when he passed away. So I put the mosaic in the basement, and I thought, that's that. But about 6 years later, I pulled it out, and I decided to finish it. And I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed working with the glass, even on my own. I hadn't expected that. And, my whole life I had been surrounded by mosaics, and not for a second did I consider being a mosaic artist, but now I wanted to. So I went online and I researched mosaics, and I saw so many beautiful pieces, and I wanted to try all different kinds. And now, a dozen years later, and hundreds of mosaics later, I consider myself incredibly lucky, because every day I'm still excited to make more mosaics. I like to make mosaics of the things in my world that I love. I love lakes and rivers and fish, and trees and chickens and herons, and even vegetables. Turns out I love people too. I've always been drawn to where water meets the land and waves meets the sky. So I spend as much time as I can there, kayaking, fishing, or just sitting. And I'm also mesmerized by the reflecting diamonds on the surface of a lake, or the way light drapes across the tops of evergreens, or quivers through the leaves of a poplar tree in the wind. These are the little stories of the water and the land and the creatures that I want to share through my mosaics. As a child, I'd run down to the local dock and watch fishing boats come in with big salmon, and I'd stare at the stuffed trophy bass and perch and walleye hanging on the walls of the old taverns and bait shops. My fish mosaics are inspired by these memories. Over time, I realized my heron and owl mosaics were drawing from old naturalist paintings of the turn of the century, like Audubon's. I started playing with profiles of chickens, and very quickly they turned into these noble portraits, like those of old family dignitaries. Now, I'm exploring portraits of people in my world that inspire me, like friends and teachers and family, and I try to let the glass and light tell a moment of that person's story, and I'm curious to see where that's going to take me. Stained glass lets the light in. You can see it. It glows like a light bright. And I remember my whole life being fascinated by the way light and color interact. As a little kid, I would stare at these colored bottles lining a windowsill of our cottage and soak in the light that passed through them, landing on the wall, and feel comforted. I was intrigued by how light filled my colorful, transparent plastic toys from the 1970s. One of my stronger childhood memories is watching a rainbow trout flash past me in a canoe. The colors burst at me, distorted beneath the water. The beauty of that moment stunned me. I think about these memories and I want to try to create moments like them with glass, particularly stained glass, because of its translucence. It feels vibrant, even alive. The first time I visited a stained glass factory, I was in awe. I felt like I was in a candy store for the eyes, and it immediately brought back my childhood fascination with light and bright colors. Throughout all my work with stained glass, it became obvious how perfect it is for representing water, sun rays, and trees, but I was amazed at how it could look like wet fish scales or even fluffy chicken feathers. If a mosaic is going to hang outside, I will grout it, but ordinarily, I would prefer not to. An ungrouted stained glass mosaic allows light to enter through the sides of the glass pieces and explode throughout the entire mosaic. I assumed I would eventually use other kinds of glass, other tessera, but so far I'm not done exploring stained glass. I love thinking that I'm painting with light when I work with it, and I'm still excited about that. I like to start with a photo of my subject. I tend to bring it into Photoshop, size it, crop it, reorganize the design a little or a lot. Next, I use the photo as a guide and draw the image in pencil onto the inside of a wooden frame. Then I paint over the sketch on the wood with watercolors, not to use as a color guide, but to unify the wood that can be seen between the glass pieces. So the sky section is painted blue and under the trees will be green. I really like how it holds each area together. To cut the glass, I use wheel nippers as well as a scoring knife with pliers. I use well-bond glue to secure the glass to the wooden background. I mostly use the scoring knife to cut larger or intricate shapes, maybe a leaf shape or fish fins. For feathers, I often start with the scoring knife and make long, narrow pieces that I nip into 2-inch curves. As I worked with both tools, cutting the shapes, I noticed many of the shapes I was making looked like brush strokes. So I leaned into that idea, and now I use Van Gogh's paintings as an inspiration when placing the pieces. You can't blend the colored glass to make new colors like with paint, but you can make it blend in the eye when colors are placed next to each other, as the pointillist painters did. With stained glass, that can feel magical.
Thank you, Joe. That was just an amazing video. Thank you for making it and sharing it with us. So I know that you often use, as you so well described, the stained glass, but I know you also sometimes use smalty. And I was wondering if there is a certain type of piece that you feel that the smalty adds to.
I started off with smalty and then moved into stained glass. And my father mostly worked in smalty after the first few years. But I think mostly it's a matter of when you want something that feels timeless, that has gravity or feels stately or classic or historical, I go with smalty. It gives those qualities to the work for me.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Lauren Mehrberg, who creates mosaics of everyday objects that signify much more than we usually attribute to them.
Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'm a mixed media artist working in glass and other treasures. I've always been fascinated by small, shiny, colorful objects and remember making my first mosaic out of tiny chiclets when I was 5 years old. I studied art in college and then got a degree in gemology and jewelry design at the Gemological Institute of America. I think of my art as jewelry for the wall. I took up mosaics as a hobby when my kids were young and soon became addicted. Making a mosaic is like creating a jigsaw puzzle and assembling the pieces any way you choose. If only life were that easy. My early mosaics were mostly pet portraits and landscapes. Now my art is inspired by relationships of all kinds. I use whimsy and humor to tell stories of life, love, loss, and hope. I'm inspired by my own experiences, those of others, and my imagination. Ideas come to me while I'm exercising, listening to music, or in the middle of the night. I'm often asked about my process, and I'm not even sure I have one. I start off with a vision and then see where it takes me. I usually make a rough sketch, and since I work with so many different materials, I pick as I go. It's always a surprise when the right thing appears to tell the story. I can find objects on the street while taking a walk or search high and low at antique stores. If I break a plate, it doesn't break my heart, unless, of course, it's a family heirloom. There's a lot of symbolism in my work, which can be like a fun treasure hunt. I prefer my messages to be subtle, to inspire questions and provoke thoughts. I was once told that I need more angst in my art, but my journey is through color, beauty, and harmony. Why shoes? I just wanted a fun departure from my usual theme, and I didn't expect this to be a turning point in my mosaics. Big feet runs in both sides of my family, and I could never find pretty shoes that fit. Maybe that's why I'm making my own. One shoe can change your life. This is the first in my Cinderella series, and I wasn't expecting it to be anything more than whimsical. Evolving over time, it started to tell a story. These shoes represent who we are, everyone different, beautiful, and equal. The images are strong, feminine, romantic, and playful, the duck boots just as special as the stilettos. The objects I incorporated, such as the screwdriver, drill bits, and frog prints, turned out to be more symbolic than arbitrary. Modern love. I once met someone who spoke in song, and I didn't realize at first that their thoughts were not their own. Everything sounded very familiar to me. That inspired me to incorporate song lyrics, poems, and recipes into my narratives. The written words are like voice bubbles, and each personality has its own font. Some examples of the symbolism in this piece are flowers and sweet fruit, a snake and a fish, a nutcracker, X-Acto blades, and a lace black bra cut up and glued under glass. It's a jungle out there. My original intention was to tell a story of dating and romantic relationships. It evolved into something more, the intersection of the natural and man-made world. The actual jungle versus the concrete jungle, and what happens when the two worlds collide. Are we living in harmony with each other or not? In my desire for unity, I put together thousands of pieces to create a whole. Halfway through this mosaic, I ended up in the hospital with 7 broken ribs. That is why Adam and Eve appear with the apples, fig leaves, and a snake, and adds just another layer to the story. Games people play. This is a story of relationships disguised as sport. Some of the hidden treasures in this piece are a whistle, a stopwatch, a scorekeeper, a fan, and inflation needles. I chose specific song lyrics to tell stories of winning, losing, waiting, and perseverance. Food, glorious food. This is my pandemic project. In my isolation, I created a sense of community by collecting handwriting from friends and family from all over the country. I put together a list of songs with titles, lyrics, or band names that mention or allude to food. Most of us were preoccupied by how to get it, where to get it, and what if it runs out. Some of the objects I used here are a vintage cherry pitter, a tea bag, a knife sharpener, and ceramic donuts. Thank you for my community helping me with this project and getting me through a very dark time. Bridge over troubled water. I made this mosaic in memory of my father. He was always very supportive of me, my children, and my art. Does this bag make me look fat? I made this mosaic in honor of my beautiful Aunt Betty. Betty either wore all pink or dressed as Wonder Woman. She had a very unusual diet of pizza, slightly undercooked chocolate chip cookies, and burnt bagels. The writing's on the wall. I found this pin on Etsy, and I'm sure I'm not the only artist to have some insecurities. Ponte Vecchio. This mosaic was inspired by my recent trip to Italy, where I bonded with fellow artists, walked 8 to 10 miles every day, and indulged in gelato, pasta, and wine guilt-free. Here you can find train tickets, museum receipts, gelato flavors, and more, all collaged under glass. I owe a special thanks to two of my best friends who have been by my side almost every day for the last 15 years. Thank you for sharing my journey. I hope you enjoyed.
Another wonderful presentation, Laura. That was great. At first, when you look at your work, it's fun and enchanting, but often the story behind the pieces are much more intense. And so when you add those everyday items and objects into your art, is that to emphasize the story or just to blend in for creative flair?
It depends on the piece and my mood and what I find. Sometimes it's just to add fun, like in the pandemic piece, the Food, Glorious Food. So I used a lot of cooking utensils and spoons and forks and like a tea bag and all that. So that just added to the story and to the theme. It wasn't, in the Modern Love, I gave personality to each shoe depending on what I chose. So it does vary, but I have fun finding different objects, and then sometimes the objects tell me where the story is going.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I loved everyone's presentations. It's amazing.
I know, they're pretty amazing. I agree.
Yeah.
Your works are very unique and really so creative. Our next presentation is going to be from Carlos Rodo, a man of color and imagination.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me and to all of you for being here. Next. My name is Carlos Rodo. I am a Costa Rican artist. Several years ago, I became interested in glass and began to build stained glass windows, and fused glass figures. Today, I am going to present you 4 murals that I consider summarize my skills. Next, please. A glass mosaic using different techniques. 15 feet by 8 feet is located in the Holiday Inn Hotel Savannah San Jose and is called the Oscar Card Zone. It was commissioned by a Guatemalan architect, and her instruction was, I need a mural that describes the typical Costa Rican card in an artistic way. Wow, it was difficult to develop the concept and get away from the typical souvenir. I conceptualized it be represented through an abstract idea of its symbology. Next, please. I will show some details. You can see the strong colors. Next. The movement. Next. The different techniques, different colors, and the symbology that I told you later. Next, please. I think all of this to achieve that the architect want. Next. Here I am in my studio working in this mural. Next. Under construction. Next. Here I am. The architect wanted it to be the focal point of the launch. I think we did. Next, please. The second one is Happy World. This is mosaic glass. The dimensions was 7 feet by 3 feet. This mural represents my world, my land, Costa Rica. The green below is the nature being invaded by the humans, of course, yet it maintains its intense green color. The brown is the forest, quiet and peaceful. The red and the mirror is the city, full of hustle and bustle. And at the end is the sun and the night. I use the spiral to represent the cycles of life. The mirror integrates the viewer into the mosaic. Next, please. Ceramic figures covered in gold represent me. Next. You can see the ceramic figures with humans, metal, colors. Next. Next, please. Here, more details and Mayan symbologies from the indigenous, Guatemalan indigenous. Next. More details. Next. A close-up view. You can see that I use a lot of different materials. Next. Next, please. Next. Next. Okay, this one is very interesting. It's assembled in 18 different units. The measure is 17 feet by 10 feet. It was a commission for the Casino Concord. I use fused glass, metal, ceramic, smalty, chips from the casino, dices, and other casino items, and a lot of different things. This mural was quite a challenge. When I went to the casino, I discovered a world full of colors, sounds, disorder, people who come and go, an undescribable, complicated environment. Despite that apparent mess, it's a very tight place, and that's how I developed the concept. Next. I place the logo in the center of the mural using high gloss dichroic glass with a predominance of gold. Next, please. Figures in ceramic, chips, casino chips. Next. You can see here ceramic cards, handmade, casino chips, dices, representing gambling and luck. Next, please. Money, coins, representing money. Next. Vibrant and strong colors. What red dominates? There are some rooster in some place, which are very typical in my work. Next, please. The ceramic cards, the roosters. Next. An assortment of various representation of the slot machines, bell, lemon, 7. Next. A world of movement and colors. That's the resume of this mural. Next, please. This is a very special mural for me, the Angel of Dreams. The dimensions is 8 feet by 4 feet. Next, please. As you can see, I like to work my mosaics with a lot of different materials. I did this mural by myself. I want to experience depths and perspectives. The photograph doesn't really reflect it as much as when you are standing in front of the mosaic. It draws you in and reflects your own image back. As most of my murals, there are human figures that represent me. Next. Combination of colors in the esmalte. Next, please. That combination of colors in esmalte accentuate the perspective. Next. Figures observe us in ceramic and glass with graphite and others in enamel. Next. Different materials here. Next. Another details, and you can see with the perspective and depths. Next. Even an elevator key evokes a past memory. Next. In the mural, there is a little angel watching over this world. Next, please. In this mural, always with plenty of details, this is called Virunga. Is an African name. 4 feet by 3 feet. It represents the great metaphor of the past that doesn't pass and the anticipation of the future that hasn't arrived. Next. Recently, I took a contemporary mosaic workshop in the Patagonia, Argentina with the master Alejandra Martin. It's a wonderful experience. Next, please. Born to be free in the pandemic. This is another sculpture that I made to participate in the Sardinian Mosaic Symposium in Italy. Next. This is the back side. Now it belongs to a private collection. Next, please. Next. This work was made in a workshop of the classical Venetian mosaic techniques with Master Giulio Menozzi in Italy. Next. Next. One of the subjects that I like are the roosters. This is a rooster made with the technique of fugue glass. Next. The tropic. I live in Costa Rica and the colors and the greens are beautiful. Next, please. Another rooster. This is a big one. Another, please. Next. Another rooster. This was my first glass mosaic mural. I did 25 years ago, 12 feet by 5 feet. Next. These two pieces are in a Chinese museum for an interesting interesting exhibition. It's infused glass. Next. Madonna in glass, mirror, and ceramic. Next. Thank you very much. This is the first mural in action. Thank you.
Carlos, that was amazing. So many different, but also beautiful and so much color. I know that your wife, Sylvia Monge, is a professional watercolor artist and uses a lot of beautiful colors. And I was just wondering if you inspire each other and if you ever do any work together.
Yes, really, my wife, the famous watercolor, I am very proud of her, is a highly creative and multidisciplinary person. She paints, makes glass, makes ceramic. For me, she has been the perfect combination. She has not only taught me the techniques, we also work together, mainly in the development of the concept of some murals and works. I love it.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And our final presentation tonight is by Rosangela Kusma Gasparin, who is an artist, teacher, and creative spirit.
Eu sou Rosangela Kusma Gasparin, sou de Curitiba, sul do Brasil, e eu faço mosaico. Eu encontrei o mosaico no ano de 2000 e me apaixonei perdidamente. Minha primeira professora foi a Bea Pereira. Bea foi a pioneira do ensino do mosaico criativo em Curitiba e é referência hoje em todo o Brasil. Quando comecei, o mosaico não era muito difundido aqui no Brasil. Então, boa parte do que eu aprendi foi através da experimentação e de uma maneira muito livre. Tentava adaptar as técnicas com os materiais e insumos daqui. No início, usava o que eu encontrava em lojas de revestimento: azulejos, pastilhas de vidro e também muitas pedras brasileiras. O grande salto na qualidade do meu mosaico foi a vinda para Curitiba da mosaicista austríaca Eda Mali, em 2003. Ela foi fundamental no meu desenvolvimento. Mudou minha visão do mosaico e abriu minha mente para todas as possibilidades que essa arte tem. Através dela, tive meu primeiro contato com o esmalte italiano, com os mármores, granitos e com a martelina. E, mais que tudo, conheci uma linguagem artística única, vibrante e autoral. Ela também me introduziu no mosaico internacional. Me tornei sócia da Associação Internacional de Mosaico Contemporâneo, participei de vários congressos e exposições e até tive minhas obras publicadas em livros e revistas. Sobre meu estilo, confesso que acho que não tem um específico. Em cada obra, procuro fazer uma nova experiência, seja provando alguma técnica que nunca usei, seja testando uma nova possibilidade de suporte, seja misturando diferentes tipos de materiais. Talvez diversidade seja de fato meu estilo, e minha mesa de trabalho é a prova disso. Sempre começo um novo trabalho partindo de uma ideia, que pode vir de uma imagem, de uma notícia, de uma música ou até de uma pedra interessante. Depois seleciono vários materiais com as cores que pretendo usar e espalho tudo ao meu redor. Sempre tenho um projeto na minha cabeça, mas na verdade até sei como o mosaico começa, mas nunca sei como ele vai terminar. É difícil falar somente sobre alguns trabalhos, pois todos têm uma história. Mas para mim, um dos mais significativos é o retrato do meu marido, feito em 2015. Na época, eu queria experimentar uma técnica da escola do Friuli que vi em fotos da internet. Mas aqui no Brasil ainda não tínhamos um material adequado para esse tipo de mosaico que tivesse uma boa paleta de cores e uma textura diferenciada. Então resolvi testar a cerâmica terracota natural e encontrei uma grande variedade de cores. Usei tijolos, vasos quebrados, telhas, ladrilhos e até alguns blocos que eu mesma produzi. É claro que seus belos olhos azuis mereciam a nobreza do esmalte italiano. Mas eu adoro a textura desse trabalho e a valorização de um material tão subestimado. Em 2020, no meio da pandemia, fui convidada para participar de uma ação artística para retratar os animais do zoológico de Curitiba, e eu escolhi o tigre Tom. Ele morreu no ano passado, mas ficou imortalizado nesse mosaico que todos adoram. Eu venho da pintura, então quando eu faço um mosaico figurativo, antes de tudo, procuro por cores. Eu gosto de imaginar as pedras como minhas misturas de tinta. Busco nuances para reproduzir o efeito tridimensional de luz e sombra e escolho os diversos materiais de acordo com a paleta de cores que eu preciso. Gosto de misturar vários tipos de pedra com pasta vítrea, cerâmicas, esmalte e o que mais encontrar. Nesse trabalho também é bem visível um conceito que eu costumo chamar de tessela expressiva. Pode ser algum material diferente, algo que é muito bonito ou mesmo exótico. Eu gosto de usar essas tesselas grandes aparecendo no trabalho. Se forem pedras, eu as uso o mais natural possível, com a forma e textura que vieram da natureza. E o grande desafio é encontrar o lugar certo para cada uma dentro do mosaico, de forma que elas se harmonizem e ao mesmo tempo sejam valorizadas. Aqui no Tigreton tem várias que consideram tesselas expressivas. A pedra que usei para o focinho, algumas pedras amarelas muito bonitas no corpo e outras mais pontiagudas que representam os pelos mais compridos. Essa variedade confere uma textura muito interessante ao mosaico e transforma um simples retrato em algo muito mais expressivo e dinâmico. Meu último trabalho é este mosaico contemporâneo intitulado Deixar para Trás. Ele foi feito especialmente para a última Bienal de Mosaico de Ravenna, em 2022. Eu gosto de contar histórias através das minhas obras, e esta fala sobre superar os últimos anos difíceis pelos quais passamos. Na parte escura, usei vários elementos inusitados para representar todas as coisas tristes que nos atingiram. As guerras, violência, poluição, lixo tóxico, as doenças, em especial a Covid, as pessoas que perdemos e até a proliferação de fake news. A vontade de deixar tudo isso para trás é representado pelo véu dourado, que separa esse passado triste de um esperado futuro mais luminoso. Essas pedras escuras que atravessam o trabalho representam a dificuldade dessa transição. Aqui elas são as minhas tesselas expressivas e delas parte todo o resto do trabalho. Para ilustrar essa busca por algo melhor, usei vários materiais belos e luminosos: ouro, citrino, cristais, vidros, cobre, alabastro e um tipo de mármore branco muito bonito produzido aqui na minha região, o Bianco Paraná. É a obra mais espiritualizada que fiz. Ela é cheia de pequenos e significativos detalhes. O andamento é fluido e ela parece iluminada. Eu amo fazer mosaico, mas descobri que gosto muito mais de ensinar. Creio que tenho um talento particular para isso. Gosto de propor ideias inusitadas a meus alunos e incentivá-los a tentar sempre algo a mais. É uma relação de mútuo prazer, em que eu tenho muita satisfação em ver a alegria dos alunos ao término de cada trabalho. Em 2013, tive o grande prazer de ser convidada para dar aulas em parceria com a minha mestra, Bea Pereira, e sua filha Letícia Melara. E em 2016, essa parceria se tornou uma sociedade na abertura da Escola Curitiba de Mosaico. Este é, depois da minha casa, meu lugar favorito no mundo. A filosofia da nossa escola é a liberdade. A ideia é ser um ateliê livre, onde o aluno desenvolve o tipo de trabalho que quiser, no seu tempo e com total liberdade de escolha de estilo, material e técnica. Ele pode escolher fazer um tampo de mesa, um retrato ou até um mosaico clássico ou contemporâneo. Bea, Letícia e eu somos orientadoras. Garantimos a correta execução das técnicas e ajudamos nas escolhas estéticas, mas sem restringir a veia criativa de cada um. O resultado são alunos entusiasmados e o ambiente é cheio de energia e vibração. Esse é o nosso playground. Nós três nos complementamos e formamos um grande time. E essa parceria me rendeu um dos momentos mais significativos da minha vida profissional, a execução do painel do Memorial Marista, em 2018. Passei quase toda a minha vida adulta fazendo, estudando e pensando mosaico. O mosaico me completa, me traz alegria e realização e me deu grandes amigos para o resto da minha vida.
Wow.
It was amazing. That was really a wonderful
Oh,
presentation.
thank you. Thank you.
So I noticed you are very comfortable using all sorts of materials. And I know at least earlier in your career, there was difficulty finding the more traditional types. So do you think that helps you to become really comfortable with all the different types of materials you use?
I like to try different kind of materials. And when I start, we have only tiles, and it's hard because tile is so flat and it's beautiful, but it's not so much artistic. And so I started to looking for another kind of material. And here in Brazil, we have beautiful stones. I have semi-precious stones, and I started to use it. But I always want more. I started to make ceramics to use in my mosaic, and I was inspired by Ilana Shafir, amazing Ilana Shafir. And I learned to make a fused glass to use. So I think with the problem that don't have material here, help me to be more creative and to have more skills and learn a lot of things, make the supports and wherever. So it was important for me. What in the beginning looks like it's not good, don't have material, but for me it was really good. Was amazing, and now I use a lot of things, and I like to research these, and I like to use cheap materials, not expensive, and try to make beautiful things with this kind of material.
Well, you certainly succeed, so I really appreciate it. I think
thank you.
Yes, this is the end of all the presentations, and we can open it up to questions. So if you want to go to gallery view, you can see each other. And if people, I mean, all the way through this, through every presentation in the chat, it was all about how amazing your presentations were. Every one of them were just really wonderful. I don't know, and everybody was clapping. You couldn't hear it or see it, but everybody was clapping after each of your presentations. So I can certainly give you all of these remarks, but I wondered if anybody had a question or a comment that they'd like to make now with the artist.
I have a couple of questions. Lauren, I think, was talking about using personalities and displaying personalities, using color and harmony. And I'm really curious. I know an artist who uses some of the quirks of personalities to create some very humorous pieces that are very playful. How are you expressing the personalities, or what personalities are you expressing? Are they people you know? Are they people that cause angst? Are they?
Yes, some of them. So, let's see. I guess I'll go back to the modern love. Like, I was doing that, to talk about dating experience, my own and other people, and, some of my friends, and most of it's just from my imagination. But it was very strange when I was creating the beautiful, like, seductress type shoe with the, the black bra. Like, I went to Marshall's and I got the black bra and I cut it up, and I had some very strange physical reaction. My blood pressure was going through the roof, and I was almost angry that she turned out to be so beautiful. So then I went back to the other one who's more sweet and innocent, which is probably who I relate to more, and I had to make some changes there. So I don't know, it's mostly to entertain myself sometimes.
Sometimes it's entertainment and sometimes it's
Yeah,
personal therapy.
right, exactly. It's both.
Unless it's
So,
resolve
no, it's
something.
definitely therapeutic, but you know,
Yes,
if I can't make myself laugh, then you know,
exactly.
what's the point?
Yes. And I had another question for Joseph. Does anyone else have another question they want to step in? No? Okay. My question for Joseph, you talked about using the tesserae like pointillism. How small do you need to make those pieces in order for those colors to meld and merge with one another?
I kind of think that it works even with larger pieces to a degree, but I do go pretty small. I mean, I've got, yeah, very, very small, like the size of popcorn, if I'm really trying to get an effect. Yeah, and I think it does work. I think it's kind of magical how it does work.
And I noticed you use some transparent glass.
Well,
Transparent stained glass.
I'm never certain whether to call it stained glass or sheet glass or fused glass.
Yeah.
I understand fused glasses, but I use all of those. I guess if they're obviously fused glass is two types of glass together. So a lot of it is transparent. I mean, most of it is transparent to a degree, and then some of it isn't. But having the transparent in it, I think, is what gives it such a brightness, such a vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also really appreciate, I wanted to thank you for giving me permission to never have to grout again. When I can think about the way that light comes in from the side of the glass and just magnifies the experience, I never have to grout again if I'm doing my own mosaic.
I think it is something special, but grout can work beautifully and can be a wonderful feature of a mosaic, especially a mosaic that hangs outside. But there's just something so vibrant about ungrouted stained glass. Yeah.
Yes. Well, your work certainly displays that. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure.
I'm going to let someone else ask a question.
Most of the comments were bravo, amazing, you know, and everyone, and I want to say that most of you have not had to put together a presentation like this before. And so I was more than impressed with how you did and what you put out there. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm glad no one asked me to do it. That's all I can say.
We'll ask you next.
Yeah.
Well, yes, the
All right,
presentations were great. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Really appreciate it. And we'll be happy to record this and put it on the cma2 site and have it out there for people because it was a wonderful presentation. So thank you all.
I found everyone's work really inspiring and amazing. Like I've never seen anything like what you do ever. So it was great.
It was.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.